Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me pleasure to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
I rise in support of this rule. It's obviously a very fair rule because I'm allowed to offer an amendment later on, so I am pleased to be able to vote for this rule. I have an amendment that I'm going to offer in Title I, which will be designated so that the Social Security number cannot be used for the electronic personal identifier for any of the programs in this educational bill. The American people have become very worried about how often the Social Security number is being used as a national identification number. And we're working quickly toward the time where we have a national identification card. We certainly have abused the Social Security number as being the number. It was never intended that way. That is not what was intended when the Social Security was started, that this number would be a universal number for everything. In 1974, it was stated rather explicitly that the Social Security number should not be used for programs like this, and I would like to just quote the Privacy Act of 1974. It shall be unlawful for any federal, state, or local government agency to deny any individual any right, benefit, or privilege provided by law because such individual's refusal to disclose his Social Security number. And I think this is a good idea, because today we're very much aware of the fact that if a company, if a loaning company, or if you're going into a store to buy something, if they get your name and your Social Security number, you know that they can call up more information about you than you know about yourself. I think this is a serious threat to the privacy of every American citizen, and we should be cautious about using the Social Security number. It's being used all the time. Prior to coming to this Congress, I was an obstetrician delivering babies. And babies can't leave the hospital these days without a Social Security number. So where they're born with a Social Security number, they don't leave the hospital. And do you know that you cannot have a death certificate without a Social Security number? I mean, they're every place. It's an intrusion in our privacy. We do not need to use a Social Security number. When I was in the Air Force, we used to have an identification number, but now today it's the Social Security number. Not too many years ago, a law was passed here in the Congress that mandates that each state licensing agents for our automobile says that you have to have a Social Security number. So now there will be cross-checking with Social Security number and all our driver's license numbers. We are losing our privacy in this country. The American people know it. We do not need this number to be used in this program for it to be successful, and we should move very cautiously. And I hope I can get support for this amendment so that we do not use the Social Security number as the electronic personal identifier. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Are there any amendments to Title I? For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? The clerk will report the title. I'm sorry, the clerk will report the amendment.
Part 3 amendment offered by Mr. Paul of Texas, page 50, line 13, at the end of paragraph 1, add the following new sentence. The Secretary shall not use the Social Security account numbers issued under Title II of the Social Security Act as the electronic personal identifier, and shall not use any identifier used in any other federal program as the electronic personal identifier.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
This amendment is not a complex amendment. It merely states that the Social Security numbers cannot be used to identify the individuals who will be participating in this program. This is a common practice, obviously, today. The Social Security number is used just for about everything. Matter of fact, many Americans think way too often. There are 40 federal programs now that the Social Security number is required. Not only that, the federal government now has been mandating the use of the Social Security number for similar purposes, even on state programs such as obtaining our driver's license. The concern that I have and that many Americans have is that government is too intrusive, wants too many records, and about everybody. The government and non-government people can get your name and they can get your social security number and find out more about you than you know about yourself. And that is not the intent of our Constitution. It certainly is not the intent of the Privacy Act. The Privacy Act concerns were expressed in legislation 1974, stating that, yes, we have overstepped our bounds. There's too much intrusiveness, and we're moving in the direction of a national identification card, something that is unknown and should be unheard of in a free society. We should not have an identity card to carry our papers, to get jobs, open bank accounts, move about the country. But we're moving rapidly in that direction. And this is a token effort to make this point and require the government to use some other identification method for this program. It can be done. There's nothing sacred about the Social Security number. The program can be run without the use of Social Security. I would like to just read very briefly some passages from the Privacy Act of 1974 to make you stop and think about what we're doing. It shall be unlawful for any federal, state, or local government agency to deny any individual any right, benefit, or privilege provided by law because of such individual's refusal to disclose his Social Security number. That isn't the case. You don't give your Social Security number, you're in big trouble in this country. You can't even get out of the hospital if you're born without a Social Security number. You can't have your family open up a savings account for the child if you don't have a Social Security number. You are not even allowed to die at this time without a Social Security number because you need a Social Security number on your death certificate. Talk about cradle-to-grave observance by our government. Adding from the Privacy Act, any federal, state, or local government agency which requests an individual to disclose his Social Security number shall inform that individual whether that disclosure is mandatory or voluntary, by what statutory or other authority such a number is solicited, and what uses will be made of it. We don't have that happening. Numbers are just demanded, and too many people have complied with it, and we go along with it. But more and more Americans are getting upset with this monitoring of everything that we do through the Social Security number. Every single government program is now requiring it. Like I said, there are 40 programs. Immigration. Think about how the immigration programs are monitored through Social Security number. There's been attempts to use the Social Security number to monitor people in their voting. We don't need this. We do not need more government surveillance and promoting this kind of a program. The program can survive, can work, and some would argue, well, possibly, just possibly, the efficiency of the program may be diminished. That will be the argument that I'll probably hear. The efficiency of the program will be diminished. Well, if this is the argument, then you are saying that we are here to protect the efficiency of the state. I see an important role for us to be here is to protect the privacy and the civil liberties of the citizen. So we're in conflict. Which should our role be? To protect privacy and civil liberties? Or is it to protect the efficiency of the state? Well, it's not difficult for me to figure that out. And it's not like I'm saying this program wouldn't exist. It's just saying that we will put a small amount of surveillance on this where the government is not so casual in expanding its role for the Social Security number. In the Privacy Act in 1974, in the findings, they made a comment which I think is very important. The Congress finds that and this is 1974 when it wasn't really bad. The Congress finds the opportunities for an individual to secure employment, insurance, and credit, and his right to due process and other legal protections are endangered by the misuse of certain information systems. I ask you to support this amendment. This is a positive amendment. This is an amendment to protect civil liberties of every American.